Hey, welcome to the show. My name is Mike Phillips. I'll be your host. This is the Leadership Toolkit. As he mentioned, we're going to dive in. We're going to have collaborative conversations. We're going to talk about wins, about losses, about how you can communicate better, how you can grow yourself, because if you yourself are not growing, you can't grow the people around you. So thank you so much for investing your time with me today. I've got an absolutely phenomenal guest. I told him I'd be sure to get this right. One, he's a really good friend of mine, but he is also the COO of BowTie Solutions. He is a digital director with a large automotive group that he's grown, or he's helped to grow from like 2 points to I think 7 points it is. He'll correct me when I bring him on here, but just an absolutely phenomenal human being. 40 under 40 in automotive news, lots of awards for excellence in leadership and management. And today I bring to you the amazing Matt Raymond. Matt, welcome to the show today, man.
Mike, how's it going today?
It's going fantastic, especially now that you're here.
Well, I was trying to do the big cheesy smile because you're like, you said I looked a little stressed out earlier today, and it was drinking water through a fire hose today with BowTie Solutions, but all good stuff.
That happens, man. Yeah, I mean, and that's the biggest thing is how do we deal with stress? How do we get through it, right? And what's the good on the other side? We were talking about that right before we went live. It's like, what's the good on the other side? Sometimes we can't see it because it's so close, but there's something past it, isn't there?
Absolutely. So, but thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited to dive into kind of the topics that, have helped me grow over the last couple of years and be who I am too.
Absolutely. Well, if you would take just a moment and for the people that are tuning in to watch with us right now, or people that are tuning in later, whether it's on the audio podcast or video podcast. And speaking of which, I've been meaning to say this. If you're watching right now, please click the like button and make sure you subscribe so you see lots more of the Leadership Toolkit. And with that, Matt, if you would do me a favor and just take people with you and share with them a little bit of who you are, what's a little bit of your leadership journey, what's your background, what is BowTie Solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in automotive now for 13 years, and I came down to Team Automotive Group 5 years ago. The goal was to grow from one store to 10 stores. We're working and getting there, currently sitting at 7. And I wanted to get the BDC up and running, and we did that. We then implemented a service BDC and just continued to grow, took over the marketing and everything else. And then over the last year, we built a product which has now turned into its own company, its own business, BowTie Solutions. And so we are, I like to use a slogan out of Tommy Boy, but tweak it a little bit, but we're built for dealers by dealers. And so we are very customizable to what a dealership's looking for an outsourced service BDC.
And so can you expand on that real quick before you move on? Like, what is an outsourced service BDC? What do they do?
Yeah, absolutely. So an outsourced service BDC is an extension of your dealership. For BowTie Solutions, we handle all of your inbound service appointment calls, and we also make outbound phone calls to recall lists, retention lists, manifest lists, things of that such. But we don't sit in your dealership. The one thing I like to say about BowTie Solutions, though, is we're an extension of your team. We're going to get a local phone number. We're going to talk to customers as though we're sitting right in your dealership. And this was all discovered and birthed out of when we purchased a store 2 years ago now. There was some CSI stuff where people didn't want to talk to a centralized call center. Mm-hmm. And so we were able to build this technology so that when we have conversations, they didn't know they were talking to a centralized call center. And it instantly flipped the conversations. Customers were happy again, just because they felt they were talking directly to the store. And sure. I was talking to Kristen Dillard and a couple other people, and I said, man, we could take this out and bring it to other dealerships. And so I have transitioned out of the role that I was in for Team Auto Group and slid over as a COO of BowTie Solutions. Obviously, Kristen and I have built this company. And so there's that definitely that Team Auto Group love and everything. And as we continue to grow, like, it's been awesome to watch them backfill different roles that I had in the organization with other people, and watch people grow. But it's cool to build your own team. And much of what I learned at Team Auto Group has helped me build the team with BowTie Solutions. I do still sit on the executive board for Team Auto Group. And so, I'm not in the day-to-day operations anymore on that side of things.
Sure.
but it's really, really awesome to watch them grow and just take off to the next level. But the other day I had to bring the car into the body shop. Yeah, I dropped it off a jack. Long story, don't want to talk about it. But I brought it into the body shop, and I didn't. It was just different because I'm so used to being so ingrained in every one of those stores, and building this is just, you don't realize how quickly you can lose relationships if you're not constantly working with people. And so over the last, couple months, as we've really kind of taken off with BowTie, is that, we're really focused on building those relationships with our clients and having those conversations. I've got a dealer that has texted me several times today as we're constantly tweaking things for a campaign that we've just had some great success on. To give you an idea, we launched a campaign yesterday. We've set 106 recall appointments for them in 2 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable, man.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I didn't think we were gonna see those numbers in 2 days.
Sure.
But it's having that direct cell phone contact, because when he called me up, he goes, "Hey, can we tweak this, or can we tweak that? Or, we've got a team that's going to, we're getting in last minute vacations at the end of the year or end of August." I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And so it's all about communication. It's all about relationships. It's all about just working together.
And that is, you've touched on so many things I want to dive into. I got to make sure to remember them. No, but that's what's exciting to me. Like when you and I first started talking, when I said, "Hey, I'm interested in having guests on the show," and you came on and signed up, I was like, dude, there is nobody better, because having watched you, and I'm on the outside, like we've become friends over the years, but on the outside, watching you grow what you're growing. And like one of the things that you touched on just a minute ago, like you moved from one store, I thought it was two when you moved in, but from one store up to 7, like that speaks volumes about your leadership and your management. So I'm going to dive in just right there for a moment. What are a few key things that you did from a BDC perspective to help in that growth? And I mean, you could take this wherever you want, but what are some key pieces of that success that you could take away from that?
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I came out of a way back in the day law enforcement background, right? And everything's kind of a paramilitary in structure. And I don't want to dive too much into getting ahead of myself on this, but recently we've done some MBS, which is management by strengths. And I
Okay.
realized like it assigns you a color, right? Like red, blue, green, yellow. And I'm blue. It means pace. It means that, I like to have a calendar. I like to know what my day consists of, very organized in that side of things. But I also can work with the reds, which are typically your automotive general managers, your general sales managers, your service directors, like the people that
Cowboys.
the people that come running in your office and go, I got a fire. And you're like, okay, what do we need to do? And so I look back on my life and I realized, holy cow, I wish I had seen this earlier in life, because it could have helped me be more expressive as to who I am and how I communicate with people.
And where do you get the colors from? You said, hey, it's a red, a blue, and so forth. Where does that come up with, like a psychological evaluation type of deal, or where did you come up with
I don't know where MBS came up with the colors. It's just what they put with the color. Like, so red is, it's D, I forget now, I'm drawing a blank on it. P is pace, D is, I think it's direct, and then E is extrovert, which is green, and then yellow is structure, I guess you could call it.
And you said it was MBS. What does MBS stand for again? Just because I try and give stuff back to the audience if people are
Absolutely. It's management by strengths.
Strengths. Got it. Put that in the notes there. So, and I know one of the other things that you said, because you are a structure guy, like you're a process guy, that you said one of the things that you brought up, and we're going to deal with a lot of acronyms today, folks. So if you're watching or listening, we're going to do acronyms. So make sure you're taking notes. One of the things that you brought up was the EOS system and how that helped you and your team move as well. What does EOS stand for?
EOS stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Gino Wickman wrote a book called Traction. If people haven't read it, it's a great book to check out. But I worked for, and I hope he sees this podcast, but I worked for this guy named Dave Woods up in Maine. And I worked for him for his car wash when I was in high school. And he taught me so much about being a leader in business. he owns a distillery now, and he owns the car wash, and he owns a ton of businesses, and everything he touches and does well with. And one day he was cleaning out the pit at the car wash. And I said, Mr. Woods, what are you doing? And he said, man, I'm never going to ask you to do a job that I wouldn't do myself. Right. Now, of course, I'm getting in there to help him out too. And it stuck with me. And over time, as I got into EOS, I realized that there's also a level at which, and this wasn't him, because he was very good at doing things and showing you how to do things, and then letting you go do things. And what he was teaching me, and I didn't realize it till I got in EOS, is there's also a point where you teach people and then you delegate that. It gives them a feeling of ownership. It gives them a feeling of embracing something and making it their own. And so over the last 5 years at Team, we implemented EOS I'd say about 4 years ago. Okay. And over the last couple of years with that, realizing how to elevate and delegate things to people and giving people a sense of ownership made them feel a part of a team. Now, I think, like you said, we're going to have a whole bunch of acronyms and everything else. Jumping back to the BDC and how did that help with the BDC is, and I don't know if I've ever shared it with you, Mike, but I had a Google Doc that I built for our BDC agents for tracking. Okay. And if we were in red for something, we were having a discussion and we were figuring out how to fix it. If we're in yellow, we're putting eyes on it and giving it some extra attention. If we're in green, I'm not bothering you at all. And
just let them jam.
Just let them jam. And so the problem is that there's managers out there today that want to micromanage and put their thumb on people and yell and scream about stuff. And yet they're not even paying attention to the metrics. They're scared. They don't know what they're looking at. They don't know what to do. It's kind of like this mindset of, I'm going to crash through this door and figure it out when I get to the other side. And that's a dangerous type of leadership to have, right? I mean, it's almost like an attack model in a war, right? And when you charge through that door, if you don't know what's on the other side or how to prepare for it, you don't know what you're going to get. You can put yourself into a battle you don't need to be in. There's also the overly cautious side, right? The people that never go through the door. And so as we've built out BowTie Solutions, our focus is just a continuous improvement, constantly coaching them. Every morning I get emails from dealerships that say, hey, can we do this? Can we do that? Can we look at this? Can we look at that? We have a morning huddle. We hit on the points of, hey, change this up. Like, for example, I had a dealer today. Please, in the notes, put morning or afternoon, mobile service, and what the recall is. That's it. That's all they want in the notes. Cool. We changed the way that we're doing it. Communication, right? So we meet with the team, we do that. What I'm looking for my team when they say, how am I being measured? Customers. We want the customers to be happy. And our customers are happy by their customers being happy. I never, ever want to hear a rep on the phone giving it back to a customer. I don't care how much a customer's tearing into you. Be respectful, because for us as BowTie, we're a representation of a dealership. Sure. And we had an instance not too long ago. A dealer called me up and said, hey, we got a customer. Did your rep tell them that they could get a free oil change? I said, let me pull the call. We pulled the call. I downloaded it. I sent it over to them. They go, no further issues. Customers satisfied. Never promised a free oil change, right? The customer thought they might take a stab at it, but and so.
Well, I talked to someone on the phone. How many times have we heard that?
Right, exactly. And so if their state allows it, or if they want it, we can record these conversations, play them back. But it's all about communication, coaching. But we just measure on so few. When I say this, I mean this in the right way. We measure on so few metrics so that an employee doesn't feel so micromanaged. They don't know what their day-to-day operation is, right? Answer the phones, be professional, help the customer out. I don't know how much simpler to make it. In running a sales BDC for so long, the metrics on that for us was pick up the phone, send out a text. Before we look at anything else, how many people are you contacting of the opportunities, that you've had in front of you? And then once they can tell me that, okay, of those that you contacted, how many appointments did you set? Because you probably see it all the time, Mike. In the auto industry, everybody asks, what's my sold ratio should be? What should my, appointment
contact rate? What should my appointment to show rate? All of the metrics. We get so tied up in the metrics that we lose sight.
I use 5 metrics, and EOS will tell you to use 5 5 metrics. If you're stationed on an island and the only thing they can communicate with you, what are your 5 metrics to know if you're on track or off track? And so my 5 metrics when I was running a sales BDC was contact rate, confirmation rate, set rate, show rate, sold rate. Because I don't care if you make 100 calls, 200 calls, or 20 calls a day. If the 20 calls, 20 appointments, 20 shows, 15 solds is better than 100 calls, 50 appointments, 2 shows, no solds.
Every time. So it's so funny that you say that, because I have that conversation with, our call center and our BDC that we've talked to for years. It's like, who's doing the better job? I mean, you've probably seen there's stuff that comes up all the time on social media, and they're like, well, it's got to have this number or this number of calls. Like, dude, you can't take phone calls out of the ATM. Okay. So you can't, let me give you a tip. You can't do that. So you have to look at what's the metric, who's doing the better job, the person that's blasting out 100 calls or 150 calls or 200 calls, or the person that's making 50 meaningful contacts and producing, like you said, you got somebody making 15 sales over the course of a day or 2 days or a week or whatever it is, compared to somebody else making 1. Who's doing the better job? It's easy to tell. I want to back up for a second too, because one of the things you talked about was the sort of accountability charts, the BDC accountability charts. And I think that's something that's so valuable from a leadership and management perspective, is how do we hold people accountable? And one of the things that you said was, well, it's simple for you, or what I heard you say, correct me if I'm wrong, is, hey, I set up this layout and then it's either red, yellow, or green. Right? People in life know that we understand red, yellow, and green. Red is stop, danger, right? Something's messed up. It's not right. Yellow is, like you said, okay, there's some engagement. You either got to floor it and get through it or slow down and make a decision. And then green, I think that's something that, and I know I'm touching on something you just touched a few moments ago, and not to put words in your mouth, if I'm missing here, jump in. But like, if somebody's green, you commented and you said, look, you just let them be, you let them do their thing. If they're within all of the metrics and they're producing and they are green on their accountability charts, I think that's something we often struggle with as leaders. Right? Leaders and managers, there are a lot of managers, especially newer managers, that want to be in knee deep in every single thing and engaged in every piece of that interaction. And the reality is, somebody may be really good at something, just let them do that thing. Right. And so how do you, let me ask you a little bit of a different question, because I think it becomes easy as leaders and managers. Like, if somebody's in red, we got to go through and either do the warning or the write up, or you train them, you transfer them, or you terminate them, right? The 3 T's, that's one of the things that we use. If somebody's in the yellow, then hopefully you're growing them and you're grooming them and you're training them to move. But what do you do if somebody is doing a great job and they're in the green? What are maybe 2 or 3 things that you would recommend, Matt, to do with them or for them to help grow them and elevate them even further from where they're sitting at right now?
So there's a couple different things we can focus on for us, and we have focused on, right? So the person that operates in the green, let me not call out an industry, but call out an industry, right? You got a sales guy that sells 40 cars a month, and all of a sudden, because he sells 40 cars a month, we make him a manager. He's really sucky at leading people. He blows out the door, goes down the street, starts selling cars for another dealer, and he still sells 40 cars a month. And he brought
I've never seen that happen. Oh, every other week that happens. I'm just kidding.
But where we like to challenge him, right, is if you've got a rep that is really, really good, before you promote that rep can start to become your trainer. Right? They can work. They're, as we called it in law enforcement, they're your FTO. They're your field training officer, right? Because nobody jumped in the police car. Let me rephrase this. Nobody in a big town or big city jumped in the police car with the chief of police. And so, I mean, Barney and Andy, they rode together, but nobody in a big town jumped together in the police car. The chief. So you rode with your field training officer. You rode with the guy or girl in your organization that can absolutely go out there and do the job. So have your agent who can do the job, take your new hires and train them. Listen to them. Listen, everything great I learned in automotive, I learned from some really good people that made me watch them. And everything bad that I learned in automotive, I learned from not doing things that people made me watch them. You know, I had a finance manager. I love the guy to death. Him and I go back and forth about football all the time now, but I'll never forget one of my first deals. He took my deal jacket and just kind of threw it across the floor and said, "It's not done. Fix it."
Oh God, that's worse.
I hope he doesn't watch this. I was brand new. I picked up the deal jacket. I put everything back together, right? I'd been through 18 weeks of a police academy years and years ago. So I was not really that worried about it. And I sat right in front of him in his desk and I said, "We can throw deal jackets every time I come in here, or you can sit with me one time and explain what you need and I'll fix it going forward." We never had a problem again, right? But there's that style.
And you said now you're friends.
Yeah. Now we're friends. But he probably doesn't want to get called out on the internet though about throwing a deal jacket. But we all know those people, right? And sometimes as managers, we don't slow down to speed up. We think people should get things as fast as we do. Listen, I am bad with building things. Like I was the guy that had the Pinewood Derby that just stayed a square block because I'm not good at building things. But if I got put in charge of building something, the last thing I'm going to do is go out there and try to run through somebody. I'm going to look for those people that can help me build it. And so I think sometimes we see that, you know, we put people in leadership positions and they're not ready for it, or they don't know what they're doing. And the only thing they know is to go back to what they did, the appointment setting, the whatever, and then just run through their people. And they don't get a chance to groom them. So like I said, we bring them in, we field train them. There's one thing. And then from there, if they move into a team leader role, they're held accountable for metrics there. So their metrics push down. So they're going to the reps and saying, "Here's my 5 measurables. I need those to deliver on every day to know if you're delivering." And then when we look at them from a manager down to a team leader point of view, we've got 5 more metrics that we're measuring. And those metrics are accumulation of everything else that's coming up.
Sure.
For example, if you have an automotive group and you have 7 stores and you say, "Hey, are we red or green in CSI?" And you say, "We're red." Well, why are we red? Well, we have one store that's off track. Well, what happened with that one store? They got one bad survey. Cool. We can fix that and get that to be green. But if you have a conversation as like an owner of a dealership and say, "Why are we red?" "I don't know." You don't want your mid-level managers having an "I don't know" answer. So it's all about pushing the accountability up. So that's kind of like number 2, right? So you've got train them, like train the trainer type thing.
Sure.
And then you've got
training.
Yep. And then you've got your accountability level is number 2. And then number 3 is really just building a culture, right? And how do you build a culture? You build a culture by establishing your core values. You build a culture by establishing, you know, who you are, what you do. And it's kind of your guiding principles, right? It's the wind in your sails. I like to say it's, you know, what keeps your boat going forward. And so, you know, a lot of times you'll see that companies, really dialed in companies, will have really solid core values. They're almost to say, when you read their core values, you're like, "Man, that's how I live my life." Good, you're hired. We want you who look at those core values and go, "Oh, I don't have to change anything in my life. I already do that." That's who you want.
Right.
You know, your core value is not, you know, we make sweet deals, or, you know, everybody drives. Like, that's not a core value. That's a goal. That's, you know.
Well, it depends on the approach. I think what's behind it, right? Culture is built through character. And so I think that's one of the things where, like, it's one thing to have a slogan, you know, like even in our automotive stores, like we have the slogan McMoog, it's the McCloskey mother of all goals, right? That's one of our things within our automotive stores. And like, what does that mean in general? Like, well, what there's a lot that's built on. Like what you're saying is, okay, it's the character behind it. Well, you could have the slogan or the saying where if we're saying, "Hey, everybody drives," like that's a tactical thing. That's a process. But what's behind that? Is it really that you're trying to serve everybody and treat everyone with respect and make sure that they get behind it? Like there can be some more to it, I think, at times, you know, that's part of what's building the culture. Culture is built through character.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, you hear this saying all the time, right? The speed of the team is the speed of the leader.
Mm-hmm.
And really getting a pulse on your staff and what they're doing. I don't care who you are. You send out a survey to your team and say, how are we doing? There's a handful of people that are like, yep, they know it's me. I'm not filling it out, and just,
Sure.
you don't want that. We've got people that would, heck, we've got somebody that I probably get, no, I'm going to leave that alone. We've got people that
Next subject.
we've got people that would tattoo their body because they believe in the company.
Sure.
And you've got other people that, are just, it's not a career for them. And so just recognizing people and we call it in EOS, we call it right people, right seat. And we've taken people that were managers in one department and moved them to a completely different department. And they've just thrived because they're a good human. They're just in the wrong seat.
It's interesting that you bring that up. I actually saw a post on social media. I want to say today, maybe it was yesterday. And this is, maybe I'll bring this full circle, or maybe I'll go totally off in the weeds. But when you're saying right people, right seat, I remember the music video that Michael Jackson did called Jam. You remember the song Jam?
I don't remember that one.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Now we're really going to have to go off on the weeds. I should really download it and play it here. Okay. So the song Michael Jackson Jam, the music video, and I saw a post on this and it was so interesting to me. I took the time to read the whole thing. It was pretty lengthy. And when you're talking about right people, right seat, it says, okay, so the music video, and let me walk you through this if somebody's listening to the podcast, was Michael Jackson and Michael Jordan in the music video. Calvin, how you doing, bro? Calvin remembers Michael Jackson's Jam. You're going to Google it after this, Matt, and you'll remember. You'll be like, "Oh, I get it, right?" There was Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan. I think he featured Heavy D at one point in it back in the day, and so I am too. I'm a huge Michael Jackson fan. So the video was at points you've got Michael Jackson, who is the best dancer of his time, right? He's in the right seat to be a dancer. You got Michael Jordan, who is the best basketball player of any time, not just his time, in my opinion, right? And so you've got these two people that are just phenomenal in an area. And it's funny because during the music video, they have Michael Jordan try and dance with Michael Jackson, and he is terrible. He's absolutely brutal. And then you have Michael Jackson going to play basketball against Michael Jordan, and he is terrible, right? It's just the whole thing. So you have somebody in that right seat and they're an absolute superstar, and you have someone in the wrong seat and they're a disaster. And it doesn't matter if they're this massive, brilliant star. And so that's what you're saying is, okay, right people, right seat. It's so wild because you can take two people that are these huge celebrities that are so good at their craft, but you put them into a different craft, you put them into a different area that they're uncomfortable in, and they could be a complete failure, right? Yep. And so I think it's really valuable. And one of the things, part of the post, I'll wrap up on this, that they said during reading this post, is they said, as leaders, we do that to our people. We expect that because they're good at one thing, they should just be good at all the things, or good at everything, or good at whatever we throw at them. Or you said it earlier, Matt, hey, as a leader, here's the thing. We're going to, we expect that they should get it as quickly as we got it. Well, just because we're good at that thing doesn't mean that they're really good at it. And secondly, if we really think back to our infancy in leadership, were we that good at it when we got started?
No. And this is one of the things that, I was talking to a young gentleman the other day about. You got to find mentors in your life. You've got to find people, and as you grow in life, you're actually going to add and drop mentors, because you get to a point where somebody will say something to you and you're like, man, it's time to cut bait and run. You were great in my life, but I got to a point now where I'm just not willing to trade places with you anymore. And you've got to push to that next level. I mean, I was thinking about BowTie the other day, and I was like, I think it would be so awesome to get on a phone call, because there was something I was looking at with BowTie and how I could scale something. I couldn't find that person to make that call to. And I'm like, I wish I could talk to a Robert Irvine, or I think that's his name. Mark Cuban or Mr. Wonderful, or one of them, just because I was watching Shark Tank and stuff. But to talk to them and just say, what would you do in this situation? because they have that business knowledge that I'm looking for. And they're not looking at their bank account. They're not looking at anything on that. They're looking at dollar signs. And so now I'm looking at something where I find somebody with build and bow tie. It's different than the dealership world, right? It's now I'm waiting on contracts to come back, and now I'm making sure that, we've got the retention going, and it's different when it's your own pocketbook, for lack of better terms,
Sure.
and so for me, that's just some of those things that, I've got to make sure that I'm focusing on, and who do I align myself with? Who do I bring into my circle that I can have that conversation with? Because
I was just going to say, I'm sorry to cut you off here, but that topic has come up just about every show that I've done. Like, who do you bring into your circle? Who are the 5 people that you're surrounding yourself with? Who are the people that are influencing you? So I think that's so valuable that you say that, because and who can you lean on when you're in something else? That's something that it takes too. Sometimes it takes bruising our ego and kicking ourselves in the jaw to be a little bit humbled to say, well, I got to ask for help in this area. So you got to know who to ask.
Yeah. I mean, this was on a LinkedIn post the other day, but I've heard it before, but I don't want to ever be the person that jumps from my ego to my IQ and ends up killing myself. It's just like, I don't ever want my ego to get that big. And I only want to grow as who I am. Like, you can probably speak to this too, Mike, because, you've got kids and things. There's no better feeling in your life to see a piece of advice that you've taken, that you've poured into somebody else, and then see how that turns out. There's nothing better. I had a BDC rep who we sat down and she never kept a check register. We sat down and did a check register and showed her how to keep a check register. And everybody on the internet right now is going, seriously, this dude keeps a check register. But I showed her, this is how you keep your checkbook, right? This is how you balance your bank account. You don't just wing it. And I said, but when you get paid every week, you can set up an auto deduction that'll transfer over to your savings account, and start building that nest egg, start building that emergency fund, start saving some of those, basic dollars that you need if something happens. I'll never forget the day she walked into my office and said, I'm resigning from BDC. And I said, what happened? She goes, well, you taught me how to save money, and I saved up enough money that I'm going to go chase my dreams. I was like,
oh, dude, I got goosebumps. That's awesome.
Like, dang, man, when you were spending money on DoorDash and everything else and didn't know how you were going to make ends meet, you were crushing it in here. But, just to watch and hear about somebody doing that was just so amazing.
Yeah.
And so, that's one of the things that for me in my life, I'm always passionate about, is taking my employees and figuring out a way to, how do we find areas in your life that we can improve on, but improve on a way within the company that you're able to grow or grow out. I interviewed a young lady the other day, and I said, where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years? And she said something, with her art and growing her art business, and then, something in business school and stuff like that. And I thought about it, and I was like, wow, cool. And she's like, why? I said, well, most people give me the canned answer, oh, I see myself here in a very successful career. And I'm like,
yeah,
I don't want anybody to tell me that they want to sit in a BDC chair for 20 years. Like, it's okay to be a revolving door. It's okay to have, come in and come out. The people that I want to see are the people that grew within the company, became managers, team leaders, department managers, or whatever else, as BowTie Solutions just expands over the years. That's what I want to see. But the people that enter, I want to see a way for us to make their life better, whether it's helping them get to the financial success so that they can go out and do something on their own, or helping them grow to the point where they can become higher up in the organization. For me, that's one of those things that is just important. It's just pouring into our people. Now, if somebody says, I want to be a BDC rep for my whole life.
Well, we need that too. If that's what, right. You need people at every level that are passionate about the level that they're on.
Correct.
And speaking of on the level leadership, that's Tammy. She's going to be joining me, I think, next week, I believe, maybe the week after that, but she's joining me on the show. But she brings up a point when you were talking about mentors and says, who aligns with your values and desired outcomes? And I think that's really powerful. It's just like what you're talking about right now. Like, hey, what's the desired outcome? What's this person going to, the young lady that you said, hey, she's resigning. She aligned with, like, you guys connected on a level and on, uh, through similar values and similar direction and everything else. And you were able to show her how to get her desired outcome. Like, I get it as somebody who's in a leadership role or in a mentorship role, like that's one of the most powerful things you can do for somebody. And like you're saying, hey, you have kids, or like we see it as kids. One of the things that's so unique, and that seriously is why I started this podcast, the Leadership Toolkit, is to allow people to grow and not to, this isn't like a self pump up or anything, but like that's one of the reasons that I started it, because ironically, I'd been podcasting for years, took a pause and a hiatus, got really sick. You know the story. That was, we were joking beforehand. The last conversation we had, I was in the hospital and we were praying together and hanging out, but that's a different story for a different time. But I got back into this because one of the craziest things happened is I've had people from all kinds of industries that have contacted me and said, hey, I watched this one show and this made a difference in my life. I had literally 2 weeks ago, a mutual friend of ours that called me and said, hey, I remember you doing your morning Bible episodes. And he says, that brought me to God, man. I'm going to church every week.
That's
Like
awesome.
those sorts of things that it's one thing for us as parents, right? Because we get to see the full growth and you get to see the full outcome as kids. But I would encourage anybody who's in a leadership role, wherever you're at in your journey, whether it's on a YouTube channel or podcast, or you're engaging, like, Matt, as you're saying here, that moment with that BDC rep where she says, hey, I'm retiring from this, I'm going to chase my dreams. Like, that's a blip on your radar because that's just who you are. But that is so impactful to her life. And it's valuable that she was able to say that directly to you. I think that's just something that we don't often as leaders get that feedback on the regular, right? People go on and do other stuff. And so when you start to get it, if you just made an impact on one person today or this week, or an impact on somebody, this year, like we're trying to impact the masses, but the reality is it's going to make a difference for someone.
It's a ripple effect, right? I mean, and I don't remember the full story, but to talk about somebody that everybody knows, Billy Graham, somebody poured into Billy Graham, and somebody poured into the person that poured into Billy Graham. And you look at like what Billy Graham went out and did.
Sure.
And I just recently had a former BDC agent. He wanted to be an attorney when he was working on our BDC. He messaged me the other day. We were connected on LinkedIn, and he messaged me the other day and said, hey, I was just kind of catching up to what you were doing. Really happy to see what's going on with BowTie Solutions. Dude, you have no idea how much everything you poured into me meant to me, and your leadership's awesome. You're going to do great. I was like, cool. And I was like, and then I clicked on his profile to see if he became an attorney and stuff. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And I won't mention where he works, but I can tell you that he's an assistant as an attorney for the United States government. And I'm like, oh, wow, big stuff.
That's big stuff.
Like he didn't go become a paralegal in Mayberry. And,
right.
He's not clerking, for a judge or something. Like he went out and just crushed it. And he thought to come back to me and just say something, and I guarantee at that level of leadership in my lifetime, I was probably not the best leader, but sometimes just being there for people and just being all that you can be in the moment that you're in, sometimes just enough to get them to that next step. Like there are people that I look back in my life and I think they were really bad at leading, but they were really good at pouring into me things that taught me to take it to the next level.
Absolutely. No, I think you're spot on there. So it's valuable if for anybody watching or listening to the show right now, take that and write it down and just realize that what you're doing, if you are in a leadership role, it doesn't matter what level, middle management, CEO, all these things. If you're pouring into someone, you're making a difference. You're making a difference in their life. And I'd say make it for better. So I have a question for you. I have two others I want to get to because you sent me a couple things to discuss. And one of the, for everybody, I tell, like, we don't do any real prep work for this show. It's just designed to be organic and get into these talks. And so I never know exactly where it's going to go. But one of the things that you sent me, and I said, hey, let's talk about a few different things. Like you mentioned EOS. One of the things that you put on your sheet in reply to me was rocks.
Yeah.
What the hell is rocks? So what, when it comes to leadership, so guys, I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm expecting Matt to say something super profound here. So you better take notes. So Matt, I bet it needs to be super profound. What is rocks?
So rocks is what we use in EOS, and a rock is a goal that you set up to accomplish in 90 days or a quarter. And every week we meet on our rocks and we say on track, off track, or done. If you're on track, nobody bothers you. If you say off track, your team that you sit on this EOS meeting with says, what do you need from us to help you accomplish this rock? Because the problem with not having rocks is people get assigned projects and they try to take on too much. Somebody posted the other day, I forget where I saw it, but somebody posted, oh, I gave a list of 10 things for my new employee to do. And like 10 things, they need 3 things. Give them 3 things. And so for a rock, you take that rock and you're going to chisel away at it throughout the quarter. And that rock can be broken down into some to-dos. It can be broken down into some metrics. But you're constantly chipping away at it. They probably call it rocks because they didn't want to call it the elephant that you're going to eat one bite at a time. But
it reminds me of Stephen Covey, like the big rocks.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that?
A little bit.
Where he's talking about, you got to focus on the big rocks first, and they take, and it's like Stephen Covey workshop. I've seen it broken down where they take the big like jug or vase, and it says, okay, well, he put all the big rocks in it, right? And then he says, oh, is it full? But if you put the sand in first, all the little stuff, like what you're saying, the to-dos and the smaller stuff, you can't fit everything in the container. You can't fit everything in your day, right?
Correct.
But if you put the big rocks first, so like what you're saying, you're taking these boulders and chipping away at them for a quarter. Calvin says 3 big rocks, just pick 3 big things to start pounding on. Then it makes it more manageable. Like you said, it's the elephant in the room to chip away at.
Yeah, exactly. And so, for us to focus on those rocks and chip away at them. And at the end of the quarter, we meet and we say, where are you at? What did you finish? What did you not finish? And sometimes those rocks end up as, oh, it's just a to-do. Like, for example, it's a handbook, right? And you chipped away, and for 3 months you wrote out this handbook and it's done, but you haven't printed it. So before you click the done button, it's like, oh, I'm almost there. Well, what does it need to be? Are you going to check in the quarterly? You'd say, well, I just need to print it. When's it going to print? Well, I have it sent out. They should print it and have it back in the mail by next week. Cool.
Sure.
Make this a to-do. So next week we're going to touch base on it, but we'll call it done. And you call it done. And the next week when you meet for just your weekly meeting, it goes, it will go on about talking about everything that you had on your to-dos. And then, hey, where's that manual? Oh, right here. Just came in the mail from the Postal Service. Check the box and we're done. And then the next rock for that quarter would be to visit maybe 7 dealerships and hand out the handbook with the HR department and talk about any questions in the handbook. And there's another big rock, right? So
Sure.
We didn't grow to 7 stores in 3.5, 4 years by not working the system. Like, that's how we did it. I will brag on team and say that, and I can say we, because we were always part of this, when we were going in and doing these buy sells, we had it down that we would shut down the day they were signing the papers for the attorney. The next morning we were back up and running, and we were in the DMVs or wherever we needed to get our licenses so that we could sell cars as soon as possible. Most of the time we could service them right away. We didn't need to wait on anything there. But we were never not operational because it was our fault. We might not have been operational instantly because red tape in the government, right? But we were not operational because of us. And we had a big vendor for us that had come in and said, holy smokes, we have never, ever seen an organization flip a buy sell this fast. And it's because we have a checklist. I hate saying this, but a friend of mine says it all the time. You know why planes don't crash? Because they have a checklist. Right? I mean, we have a checklist, and we sit down every night at dinner as a company on launch nights. Where are we at? What's done? What do you need help with? To the point that who is picking up the trash on Thursday, because that was the old dealership trash day.
Right.
Because
it's crazy because it's something that's so simple, and we as humans try and become so evolved, right? We try to become, well, we've got to do this next cool innovative thing, and how do we do this launch and tie all this stuff in and so on and so forth. And the reality is sometimes it's worth just getting back to the basics of, do you have a checklist? Who's doing this item?
I know we disagree on football teams, and you saw me hoot and holler out in Vegas for that big football game that night. But
yeah,
the Patriots' success in the defense side of things is that Bill Belichick teaches blocking, tackling. Going back to what I was just talking about, when you do a buy sell, and I'm sure somebody's going to give me a thumbs up on this podcast when they watch it afterwards. When you do a buy sell,
actually, we just got 2 thumbs downs.
Did we really?
You said Patriot. No, I'm just kidding.
When you do a buy sell,
right here. No, I'm just kidding.
But when you do a buy sell, and let's say your parts guy is in charge of trash, the parts guy that is at the previous dealership,
sure,
you could instantly kill your culture in your organization by not knowing who the trash guy is that's picking up on trash on Thursday, that the parts guy has overseen for 20 years at the previous dealership. And when the trash guy doesn't show up on Thursday, your parts guy turns around and goes, this company sucks. They don't know what they're doing. They can't even get the trash picked up on time. Like, people have no idea sometimes the amount of things that we just kind of go, poof, not my problem, that will spin an entire organization out of control.
And you're so right.
And I'll take that a step further, where I've got a friend who always says it's a knowing problem or a doing problem. And I love that saying. One of the other sayings he said, he's always hated people saying it's not my job. And I agree with that to a point, because with EOS, what I found is you need to say it's not my job. And this will probably get a lot of thumbs down from people. This whole mindset that we live in society, where you can't tell people that's not my job, that you're not a team player if you do that. No. We back up. This is the 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey is a great book to read. If people haven't read it, check it out. If I'm in my office,
what is it? The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey.
Yep.
I'm putting that in.
If I'm in my office right now working on BowTie Solutions, and I'm hammering out a contract because I have a 50 store group that wants to bring on our services. Let's say I'm doing that right now, right? That's a big deal for me. If somebody walks into my office right now and says, hey, the bathroom's out of toilet paper, if I go with the mindset of it's not my job, I am taking my mind off of something that's going to generate a lot of revenue for a company to turn around and fill the toilet paper. And I'm not diminishing a custodial role. What I'm saying is, before you take that monkey on your back, you look right at that person and say, excellent. So who are you going to get the toilet paper in the roll? I just need to know where it's kept. Excellent. It's in the closet, top shelf, the keys with the secretary. Boom.
Bam.
Keep that monkey on that person's back, because what we've done in some of these leadership roles is we've said, oh, I'm a manager, I can't tell people that's not my job. Now, don't mistake that for just pawning everything off, but encourage your people, lead your people, delegate to your people, promote your people, whatever you've got to do to say, hey, I trust you. I think we hired you because we believe you're intelligent enough to fill the toilet paper roll without coming to an executive. I use an extreme case like that because it's probably going to get some chuckles as people watch it.
Sure.
But, it's coming from a law enforcement background and working in a small town and being on midnight shifts, and at 4 o'clock in the morning coming across something. There was not this, sometimes decisions have to be made fast. And you're in a position in that type of job where your decision could cost somebody their life. It could cost you your own life. It's the same with the military. And so you have to constantly be engaged in what you're doing. And yeah, it's just everybody, the military has so many different positions and departments and things like that, because you need to be laser focused on what you're supposed to be doing.
They have to be really solid at that one thing.
You show me a BDC right now that's broken, and I'm going to tell you exactly things that they shouldn't be doing. They shouldn't be changing toilet paper. They shouldn't be updating the website. They shouldn't be, going to get everybody's lunch. I can show you the things that are going to be broken. Why? Because their focus is not on what their mission is. Their mission is business development. Their mission is to cultivate relationships and get customers in to buy and sell and service cars.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think I agree with you 100%. While on one side I hate to hear somebody say, and I hate to say, like, well, that's not my job. But the reality is, I think you hit the nail on the head, Matt, is sometimes, if depending on where you're focused on, depending on what your job truly is that the most valuable thing you could be doing right now?
Correct.
I have a saying that I've used for years in business, like, is what you're doing right now moving you closer to the goal? And I think if everybody knows what it is they're supposed to be doing, and they say, well, is what I'm doing right now moving us closer to the goal, moving me closer to my goal and the company's goal, and so forth. One last thing I want to touch on before we go. You put on here IDS, identify, discuss, solve. And that's one of those things, again, Matt shared this with me in an email. He says, hey, well, when we're getting into leadership, and I like to give valuable, actionable pieces to our audience. So can you expand on what IDS is and how you break down those three pieces?
Yeah, let me just kind of give you a real life example that probably every dealership deals with. So let's say you have a rash of 1-star reviews. You show up to your weekly EOS meeting and you go, we've got a 1-star review problem. We've got to fix today. So you sit down and you go, all right, let's identify what's going on. We're getting 1-star reviews with the service department. I'm not blaming any departments. People don't get offended. But we've got a 1-star review.
This could be any business. It could be any business.
So many disclaimers nowadays. We're getting a lot of 1-star reviews in service. Okay, so let's identify what's going on. Well, it apparently appears that our wait times are too long. Okay, so why are our wait times too long? We're short a technician. Okay, why are we short a technician? We've been trying to recruit, blah, blah, blah. But so you're identifying the problem. You're discussing the situation. So how are we going to solve it? Well, we have another technician that's in the quick loop that we could bring up to big service, and big service will allow us to speed up the process. Great. So when are we going to make that effective? I'll get off the call now. I'll call my service managers. I'll bring them in the loop, and we're going to promote, Diane from the quick loop to, technician position, and she'll oversee this. Excellent. Get it done. Put it on to-do list so we make sure we follow up with it next week. So we identified the problem, we discussed the problem, and we've solved the problem, and that's IDS.
Simple. And it's
really
the best part is that it's something that, if it's done properly, I think it's something that it can be done quickly. Right. And I'm sorry.
I use it with my family now. My wife, my kids, I'm like, let's identify the issue here. All right, let's discuss it and let's solve it. The kids are like, Dad,
Gosh, Dad. So, hey, as we're coming to the end here, first off, Matt, thank you very much for joining me. I think you've shared a lot of items. You've shared a lot of actionable stuff. I'm going to throw on the screen here one more time, if I can. If you guys want to, you can connect with Matt on LinkedIn. He gave me the full thing. It's like linkedin.com/in Matt-Raymond-264-96820.
I just cut and copied it. Normally it's like embedded in a link or a QR code.
Or you could type in Matt Raymond and you can connect with him on LinkedIn, because he'll show up. There's only one big smiling face right there on LinkedIn. And then obviously BowTie Solutions here at bowtieautosolutions.com. And then Matt, one of the other things I forgot to say that you are absolutely brilliant and famous for, and you just brought your kids up here at the end, because you are very well known in some circles for your dad jokes.
Yeah. Yep. I love my dad jokes. I got 2 of them on my phone right now. They showed up in my Facebook memories. I'll read them both to you. And Perfect. One of them I'll have to look down and read because I just can't memorize it all the time. But What's the difference between a cranky 2-year-old and a duckling?
I don't know. What's the difference?
One is a whiny toddler and the other is a tiny waddler.
Okay.
And then the other one, you gotta read the other one. It says, but why are dogs like phones? Because they have caller IDs.
I really need a soundboard. Or actually, I have a soundboard. I just need to figure out how to pass it through here. So seriously, if you are not connected with Matt, make sure to, I would connect with him on LinkedIn. If for nothing more than the dad jokes, right? Let alone the amazing and massive amount of leadership and management experience, just amazing individual. Like, I've been very blessed to have you in my circle for a number of years. You're somebody that I follow and watch and so forth. Any final thoughts, Matt, as we're headed off today?
Yeah, we're first off, Mike and I have known each other. We met at a conference in Las Vegas years ago, and Mike got to witness me order this beer that came in the stupid big mug, and I had to use 2 hands to carry it.
I remember.
Life has changed. I don't make stupid decisions like that.
I thought that was one of your better decisions, that trip, just so you know.
But all joking aside, Mike, I'm going to be at Driving Sales this year. I'm going to be at Digital Dealer this year. I'm going to be at a Mopar conference in Florida in just a couple weeks. If anybody is at any of those conferences, come up to me, introduce yourself. I always believe in meeting as many people as possible. I think that we're all stronger together. And if I can help anybody in any way, shape, or form, even just to pick up the phone and give me a call and say, hey, I got a question, I'm always happy to help.
Absolutely. No, and I can say, Matt, he definitely is always happy to help, and he is a phenomenal human being. So if you're not connected to Matt, connect with him either online or in person at one of those events. You said Digital Dealer, Driving Sales, the Mopar conference. It's the Fixed Ops conference that's going to be in Orlando, September. Man, I get so much travel. September 15th, I think it is, right around that time. Good. So. Well, yeah, definitely connect with Matt. Matt, thanks again for your time today. I appreciate you very much, man.
Definitely. Thanks.
And that is going to bring us to the close of another Leadership Toolkit. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and joining us. Do me a favor, as always, if you've got questions or comments, continue the conversation down in the comments here. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Click a like button. We do this every single Wednesday at 12:05 Mountain Time, 2:05 Eastern. I have somebody that is just a phenomenal leader in the leadership space to be able to come on and join me and share part of their journey with you so that you can grow yourself and everybody around you. So I hope you have an absolutely amazing day. Until I see you next week, be great. We'll see you soon, everybody.